Hey, I'm Christine. This is Katie. We are the RDs on campus. We are also helping put on the One Love event. So if you're watching this video, it's so that you can better understand what this training is and how we can help those who are participating in this event.
Yes, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about One Love, and then I'll turn it back to Christine, and she'll talk a little bit more about the event itself. The One Love Foundation was formed by a set of parents who lost their child, and she was dating a gentleman on her campus, and they broke up, and he didn't like that. So he killed her, which is tragic, and there are lots of stats about that. Thankfully, we don't have those stats on our campus, but we do have lots to learn about relationships, and that's what her parents' goal was in forming the One Love Foundation, was to change the conversation around dating violence and kind of teach young people ages 16 to 24 like what those red flags are, and how to not just recognize those in your own life but the people around you as well. So One Love stands for one is the number that was on Yardley's jersey when she played lacrosse, and Love is her last name. Her story and her life are an inspiration to, of course, the foundation's formation, but also moving a generation forward in changing these statistics and taking it from possibly very unhealthy relationships to good ones. So that's our goal here at Evangel.
Okay, so typically someone has already seen the One Love video, which is called Escalation. So we're just going to give you a preface on that. So at the actual event, we're going to be watching this 40-minute video, and it's really good. It's not cheesy or anything, but it also evokes some strong emotions because of what you do see, and we'll go into that in detail. So then we'll watch that 40-minute video. We'll have a discussion at tables. You'll be a discussion leader asking these questions that we will send you so that you're prepared for that.
Yeah, the video follows a couple in college. They meet, and it happens quickly. It is a male-female. Both are white. But we'll say at the beginning of the video that, this could be any relationship. But it follows Chase and Paige through the beginnings of a relationship all the way to the end. And you'll see just some things that you look like every day to you. You'll see like social media, how social media influences a relationship. You'll see how their friends do or don't play a role as things escalate between them. And then we'll see, there's a specific scene actually where they are hanging out in his room, and he doesn't want her to leave, and he doesn't let her leave, and we're led to believe that they do have sex in the room, but it doesn't show that, of course. It just shows the next morning, or what appears to be the next morning. I guess time-wise I'm not sure, but it appears to be later, and she wakes up and has a really funny look on her face, like she doesn't feel great about whatever just happened. So it doesn't really tell us specifically what happened, but as a viewer you can infer that something did happen. And so we just want to warn you, like, that is part of the video. Like, it's a real life, like, these are, it follows real parts of a relationship. It's not just all the surfacey stuff that we see, that's not behind closed doors. It does go in depth with this couple. So it does move rather quickly. Like she said, it's only 40 minutes, and we know how it ends because it is based on Yardley's story. So they show him hitting her in her apartment later, and she dies from that. So a lot of times, based on what the One Love folks have shared with me and over the phone and such, they always say, we've never had a discussion with students that didn't start with just silence. Like, after the video, they're just kind of like, I don't know what I feel about that. Like, those were a lot of red flags I see all the time around me. Can it really end that way? And the video will end with numerous faces with the timelines of their life who have that unfortunate ending as well. So the movie, like, it will feel pretty depressing in the room after we watch the video. But what's awesome about the discussion that we'll have both in tables and as a big room, we'll have a few questions for the whole room. what's great about those questions is it moves us from a place of thinking about what we just saw, observing it, seeing how we felt about that, to a place of like, what is our role in that? How can we change this? How can we be part of someone's story so that it doesn't end that way, or so that we can just spare one another from awful relationships by supporting one another. So that's the gist of the movie. Yeah. So.
And then I'll go into detail about how to train you, how to respond to certain things if certain table members are asking certain questions or reacting certain ways. So I'll do that. Yeah. Next. So now that you know a little bit about what the event is about, what the video is going to be about, I want to take the time to train you how to be a good facilitator and a good table leader, so that even though your job isn't working with domestic violence or counseling, you'll still be equipped to be able to know how to handle certain situations with the people who are sitting at your table. So first of all, we want this to be a positive event. Even though it's a tragic story about how Yardley's life ended, we want this to be a positive thing, because it's not just telling her story, it's about helping others so that they can be prevented from having that, so that we can help our friends avoid relationships like that. So this is a positive event, and we want it to be presented as such. In the discussions, we'll also talk about how to have a healthy relationship, what is a healthy relationship, and how can we encourage our friends and ask the right kinds of questions to make sure that they are in healthy relationships. And if they're not, how to step in, how to talk to them about that, and how to just promote safety and promote healthy relationships. One piece of advice is to let the students at your table do the talking and not you doing the talking and you sharing your opinion and answering the questions. That's how they're going to learn, is through that interaction, through that engagement. So we definitely want to encourage that from them. But if you notice something going in a tangent and kind of going in a direction where it's like, how do we get on this topic? Definitely redirect it. You can do that by just kind of reframing the question and getting them back on the right track. One thing that might happen, or you might be worried about, is what if nobody is talking? What if you ask this question and there's just silence? So after the movie, people might need a little bit of time to process. They might be quiet right away, just trying to take it all in and try to see how they feel about the movie, and also how to respond to that. So it's normal for there to be some kind of pause and silence, and it's also going to feel longer to you as the facilitator than the actual silence is. So you can count to 10 in your head, and probably by the time that you reach 10, someone will start talking. But don't take that silence as you answering the question, or you just kind of moving on because you think nobody's going to talk, because eventually somebody will talk. They'll be uncomfortable with the silence just as much as you will, so someone will speak up. And if, worst case scenario, it's 2 minutes and no one has said anything, you could say something like, I'm hearing a long silence. I'm curious what your thoughts are on the question that I asked, and then repeat the question. And then go from there. Something else that you might encounter as a table leader is someone revealing something personal about themselves. So this video is going to evoke some strong emotions, and it might lead some people to sharing some things that they've experienced, or maybe about a friend. And that is great, but there's a time and a place for that. If they say it in a way that's like, I was a victim of this and it was helpful when my friends stepped in and supported me, like, that's an appropriate thing for them to say. But if it's kind of turning into a therapy session and they're just like sharing all these things, that's not really the place for that. And you have to keep in mind the other 6 people at your table, or whoever else is at your table. We want everyone to feel comfortable, and not just that one person who is experiencing those things. So if that's the case, you can definitely share, I would love to meet with you about this later, but really try to engage everyone and not just make that one person feel comfortable. And if one person tends to be dominating the conversation, try to engage everyone else, because we want this to be a free-flowing conversation and not just a one-person expert sharing this, because we all have something valuable to share. We all have our different experiences, and we can learn from everyone at that table. The next thing that we're going to talk about is what if someone is triggered. So if someone has experienced something like this before, this movie might bring back some memories of that, bring back some of the trauma that they've experienced, and they might exhibit some signs of triggers. So triggers are just kind of like reactions to reminders of that trauma. So some triggers that you might see are crying, numbness, kind of just no emotion, pulling back, things like that. There might be some inappropriate reactions like laughter, aggression, victim blaming, things like that. And becoming like inappropriate, discussing inappropriate things at the table. So those are some triggers that you might see. So we're going to talk about how to respond to those. If someone is expressing those triggers, just try to keep your cool no matter what, and try to make everyone at the table comfortable and not just the person who is being triggered. Also, if it's a trigger where you just don't think you can handle it, where it's kind of just above you and you need some assistance from some of the professionals in the room, we'll have some people from the counseling center. But we're going to have a system, maybe like a colored piece of paper that you flip over to kind of show us like, hey, I need some help over here. So there's also that if you do think it's above you. So as far as how for you to respond to those triggers, here are some tips on that. Kind words and your facial expressions can go a long way. Don't touch them. It might be tempting to kind of like hug them, pat them, to comfort them, but that also might trigger them more. So just be kind with your words, be kind with your facial expressions. That's one way to help them through their triggering emotions. You can also say, like, it's common for films like this to stir up strong emotions. How can I help you feel better right now? And then whatever the response is, respect that. So if they're saying, I'm fine, I just want to sit here, respect that. If they're saying, I need to leave or I need to just walk out for a second, respect that as well. Also, definitely respect that person's privacy. So say their roommate comes up to you because they saw their friend leave the room crying and they ask like, oh my gosh, is she okay? I saw her leaving. What happened? Just say, yeah, she's okay. Just be subtle about it to respect their privacy. And finally, we'll talk about how to handle a disruptive audience member. So violence in relationships can seem controversial to some. Maybe if someone says, well, why didn't she speak up for herself? Why didn't she leave him? Why did she go back to him? That's called victim blaming. So we're blaming her for his behavior when he was the one doing those things. One response could be, young people are inexperienced in relationships. There's a lot of violence in the media, and maybe she didn't know how to handle that situation. That's not her fault. Another defense for victims of violence could be, they're in total shock when somebody that they care about or someone they thought cared about them treats them in a violent way. So there's that shock. You don't know how to respond at first. They might want to kiss and make up just to put it behind them and move forward. And then by the time that they process what has happened, they may feel like it's too late to do anything about it. Also, logic isn't always at play when somebody is scared or startled. And many times they may feel like, oh, I must have done something. And a lot of times abusers will blame their victims for their own behavior and say, like, it's your fault. You made me do this. If you hadn't done this, I wouldn't have done that. So that's also a tactic used. Sometimes those who are abused may think, they realize that behavior was inappropriate, but they also might feel like it's their job to save that person. So then they forgive and just try to fix them. Also, being abused is embarrassing. There's a stigma behind that. So there's some shame in that. So then they just want to cover it up and pretend like everything's okay. Someone might also use the argument that it's not very common that people would get killed by their abuser. And while that might be true, this is Yardley's story. This is what happened to her, and we're sharing this. While that might not be the case for many people, it was the case for her. So this is the example that we're using to help people realize that this is a big issue. This is very dangerous. This does happen, and this is why we are having this event, to show that and to promote healthy relationships. So there's some instruction on how to be a good facilitator, on how to respond to certain situations that you might come across while being a table leader at this One Love event. If you have any questions, go ahead and email myself or Katie. We would love to answer those for you. And thank you so much for being a part of this event. We are looking forward to spreading awareness about Yardley's story and also stepping in to help our friends and to help ourselves have healthy relationships and promote that across our campus.